Okay, the car is on. Parking brake is on. The car is in park. The climate control unit is working. Both temperatures are... I'm using the steering wheel volume button, so the steering wheel controls work. And the Apple wireless CarPlay has connected. There's the green icon. There it is. So I got the wireless CarPlay on. No wires. And no warning that speed sensor must be connected. And this is how I quiet it. That's the mute button. Mute button is off. These are all steering wheel buttons. But what about Apple CarPlay? Let's touch this icon. Here we go. So these are the text message pages. This is that was YouTube Music. I use that a lot. But that's the main page. So I got my phone, music, maps, messages. Removing a stock head unit, this P206UHB, which combines the audio unit with a climate control unit in an inseparable manner. This is the head unit that I just took out of my 2009 Subaru Outback Limited. This is a 6 CD changer P206 UHB, Outbacks Limited and Outback Special Editions, and 6-cylinder Outbacks, which they made back then, came with this upgraded kind of unit. The basic Outbacks did not have digital climate control. You didn't get to digitally select your temperatures. But like I said, some of the slightly fancier Outbacks did. So the problem with this unit is if you want a new head unit, if you want a new radio, CD player, if you want something like wireless Apple CarPlay, you remove this, you're going to remove your climate control unit. And if you go on a website of a company that sells aftermarket equipment, like for example Crutchfield, they will say that if you have this in your car, replacing this is not recommended, and in fact is kind of impossible unless you don't need heating or air conditioning in your car. But by watching YouTube, I figured out that it is quite possible and very doable. And that's what I'm doing right now. The power of the internet is incredible. There are experts in this. A guy named David Carter, who is at a website, www.ae64.com, is an expert in how Subarus are wired up. And he essentially will give you a step-by-step on how to do this, sell you the necessary harnesses for very reasonable and affordable prices, and you will get to have these modern functionalities. And I need them. I'm in a state where it is no longer legal to hold the cell phone in your hand while driving. So I'm going to replace it with this. And this is not one thing. I'm going to show you in a second how this goes together. So what this is an aftermarket climate control unit for this car that, by the way, doesn't come in this color anymore. It used to, but now it only comes in black. But that's okay. There's a lot of black trim in this car. So at the bottom here is a I think I got some dirt on it. Oh, I gotta clean it, it's brand new. At the bottom here is an aftermarket climate control unit, which is like the lower half of this, but it's separate. And on top is an adapter that will hold a double DIN head unit. And as you can see these brackets over here. These are identical, so this comes with its own sets of brackets. This is a kit that's available in Japan for cars sold in Japan. I bought it from one of the businesses that's in Japan that regularly and reliably ships parts to the customers in the United States. There's at least two of them. The search features on their websites don't work great, probably because of translation issues. But if you buy a part that's only available in Japan, they'll send it to you, and it works out great. And I learned how to do this on www.ae64.com. And interestingly, this thing is made by Panasonic, the aftermarket climate control unit that looks similar. I should say it's not totally identical. The knobs sit deeper, so they don't stick out as far. And it's a mirror image because, of course, in Japan they drive on the other side of the road. So as you can see, the hazard switch here is on that side, hazard switch here is on this side. And this hazard switch is probably why this item, this kit, is not sold in the United States. It doesn't fit into a left-hand drive car. You have to remove maybe a 1/4 inch of plastic with a saw behind this panel, so you don't see this modification. I'm going to film it. You don't see it when you're sitting in the car, but of course you can sell parts that would require you to cut up your car with a saw. But once you create just a little bit of room behind here for this hazard switch, the harness to the hazard switch does reach to the other side over the top of the unit, and this whole thing fits. And except that it's the mirror image and the hazard switch is on the other side, the mode button is on the end here, where over there it's not quite on the end, so it's reversed with the AC button. The fan button is moved slightly, but they do make an almost mirror image. So how does this work? Let me take it apart. So this is a separate climate control unit that's not available in the United States that I bought from Japan, that, as I just mentioned, closely resembles what's on the original head unit. And when you plug it into the car, it works fine. There are slight differences. The temperature is displayed with a decimal point, but somehow this thing finds out from the car that we like our temperature in Fahrenheit, and so it indicates temperature that you set in Fahrenheit. And the rest of it is mounting brackets, which are just like the brackets on the factory head unit, and this bezel thing that lets you put any double DIN head unit in here. So let me take off the bezel. So the bezel is off. So this is Kenwood KNA-SPM100 an aftermarket double DIN head unit for cars that can be put into any car. So this is the kit you buy from Japan that is available for these cars on the Japanese market, and a control unit, which by the way is made by Kenwood. The original head unit is made by Panasonic in Mexico. This unit is made by Kenwood in China, and this bezel and a couple of mounting brackets, and now you can get a new head unit into a limited Subaru. I'm fabricating the harness that will plug into the back of my new Kenwood Exelon head unit. It will also plug into the back of the climate controlled unit from the Japanese kit that I showed. It will plug into the Axxess box for steering wheel control integration, and it will have a connection to the vehicle's speed pulse generator, and some other connections like the parking brake connector and the reverse input connector, which tells the unit that it should turn on the backup camera, which I'm also putting in as part of this install. And of course some other wires like power and ignition power and the dimmer and dimmer negative. So it's a complex harness that on one end plugs into all of your new equipment, and the other end plugs into what is already in the car and what has always been there. And that way you don't cut any wires inside the car. And I bought connectors and prefabricated harnesses from ae64.com, which is a website run by David Carter, who is a real expert in Subaru wiring, and there is a wealth of information on that website that is sort of priceless. You would not have been able to do this. I would not have been able to do this without this information. I'm still putting finishing touches on this complicated harness. This is the Axxess with two X's. This is the encoder for the steering wheel buttons. Our Kenwood head units have a single wire steering wheel input. That's the wire. It's blue with a yellow stripe. So this controller needs to be wired to power and grounded, of course. And then most head units are controlled with this 3.5mm jack, but not in case of Kenwood's. Kenwood's are controlled with this single wire I just showed you. So this just plugs in like that. One thing that's unfinished, it's this pink wire. This is the input for the vehicle speed signals. This is the stock head unit that came in the vehicle that I've removed, and it has several connectors. The big Subaru 14-pin audio connector. So using the harness, I now have a connector that looks just like this. So I can either put this in there right now, or I can put this in there right now, because the connector is identical. This one is unused because it goes with satellite radio, but I have the other two. I have this one right here, which is on the back of my new unit, which looks like, which is like this one on the back of the old unit. And there is another one down here. So I can just plug this in, or I can plug that in. And that's the way to do it without cutting wires inside the car. Here's what happens if you try to use wireless Apple CarPlay without speed pulse input from the vehicle into your head unit. You're going to get an error message like this, and you're going to be forced to use the wired Apple CarPlay. The same happens if the unit doesn't have its GPS antenna plugged in, although I don't have picture of that error message. So if you want wireless Apple CarPlay and probably wireless Android, although I'm not totally sure about that, you need vehicle speed signal input into the pink wire on this particular Kenwood X1. The Kenwood OBD2 speed pulse generator arrived. Hopefully it helps me solve my problem. So what in a package is the OBD2 plug, and of course I now know which pins I need here. So this is the power harness with a fuse, but this is the gizmo, the actual little speed pulse generator.
All right, so we're here in the footwell of the driver's side of this car. This is the OBD2 connector that got unscrewed from the panel. The panel's been removed. Everything else is still in place. And there's no connector up there that's within easy reach, so there's no option of taking this off. So if I connect this connector like so, which is how it was meant to be connected, except that of course the port becomes unusable. In the event that that's done, these two wires would be connected to the red one and this light blue one. So the light blue one represents the yellow one here. So the plan is to solder this in so that the port is usable as it would be in a normal car. So there's some electrical tape to remove. I'm glad to be getting out of this uncomfortable location. I'm ready to screw this connector back on.
This is the hazard switch Japanese edition. Of course, the original hazard switch was right here, so it's a mirror image. And the switch is behind here, and this piece of plastic is interfering right now. And here we're in the process of minor surgery to create a little space for the back of the hazard switch. Minor modification that doesn't affect the strength. And here is the backup camera going on. I decided to install it high because on these station wagons everything gets really dirty on the back because of aerodynamics. We'll see if it stays cleaner than if it was lower. This is time consuming, and what takes the greatest time is pulling the line to the front of the car. And I will not be showing it because it's impossible to get a good video of this. It takes a long time, but it's logical and straightforward. All right, let's try to get this in. Here is the assembly. Start with chassis ground. Okay, single spade chassis ground hooked up. Antenna for the FM radio, AM radio. Antenna is hooked up. The trying to get myself in position here. This is one of the car interface that deals with dimming and climate control. It's the first one. That one is in. That's the second one. Can't see my complex harness here. I'll connect the 14 pin, the white one, that's the 14 pin Subaru radio. It's relatively similar, I understand, on most Subarus. That's the other one that deals with dimming and climate. Alright, so the three connectors that were in the original head unit, other than the antenna and the ground, those are in. This is the hazard switch, which in this car is attached to the head unit for geography purposes, sort of. It's the hazard switch I had to buy from Japan because it's a mirror image of the one we use here. Okay, that's in. This is the wire that tells the head unit the car is in reverse. Got that in. Yeah, reverse signal is connected. And I've already connected the parking signal. Okay, the speakerphone microphone. Speakerphone mic. That's the mic. Okay, mic is connected. The steering wheel control and the other car interface I'm not using other than the single wire steering wheel control. Alright, this is the video feed from the backup camera. We're connecting this. Okay, the backup camera is connected. It has to be the GPS antenna, which I can't find right now. Found the GPS antenna. Okay, GPS antenna is connected. And then, last but not least, for the entertainment value, the Android and Google CarPlay USBs. These are just USB ports that go elsewhere in the car. That's the Apple, and that's the Android. Alright, I'm connected. There's good room there. And we're in. I believe that I'm about to make the last connection of this install. This is the speed sensor. This is the power for the speed sensor box, for the speed sensor input, for the speed pulse rather input. And this is the harness that I spent time wiring into the OBD2 port, or just above the OBD2 port. And this is the little Kenwood speed sensor pulse generator that picks up the OBD2 signal and creates a speed sensor pulse for us. So let's connect the, this is where it's gonna get its input from the computer in the car. This is its power. And now what's left is to connect it to the head unit. It's connected to the head unit using this little harness. But the mystery remains as to why speed sensor input is completely necessary for wireless Apple CarPlay. Since I've had some time to think about it, I'm guessing it has to do with Apple CarPlay verifying that the phone is in the car, or we should say in this car, because the speed sensor input is not the only thing that's required. There's a GPS antenna that's required. There's much ado about this GPS antenna, even though this unit uses the phone's GPS and not its own GPS. It must be making comparison between the phone's GPS and its own GPS, and somehow speed sensor data figures into this comparison as well. Okay, this is the last connection. Alright, well, the project is done. I got wireless Apple CarPlay. I like how this Kenwood DMX906S fits into this car. When I switch it into the red theme, this car has a lot of red. Backup camera works. And so, over here with Bob Marley and the Wailers, playing on the new stereo through the Harman Kardon amplifier under the passenger seat here. I bid you farewell, take care, I'll see you on the next project.